Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Cromar, and I am here constantly learning to help us all learn how to naturally thrive. That is my goal, to help us be aware of all of the environmental factors all around us that are impacting our health, either in a positive way or a negative way. And it's going to be important that we pay close attention to everything that we are exposed to, some of the things we have control over, some of the things we don't. So my goal is to help you learn what are some of the things you have control of and how you can support your health and your body and learn to naturally thrive. So it's been months, 5, maybe even 6 months since my last video. Well, I did one just the other day in the ER when Holden was having some severe seizures, just expressing my thoughts about vaccine injury. But today I want to jump back into kind of the fear versus freedom style videos that I was doing, where I touched on vaccine safety, I touched on social engineering, and I also touched on excitotoxins, MSG, aspartame, natural flavors, yeast extracts, isolated proteins, things like that, very high in glutamate, that cause neuroexcitatory symptoms and destroying our brain cells, things like that. I want to move on to another neurotoxic chemical that just about every single one of us are exposed to every day in extremely high amounts. And it's destroying our health, and what we've been told our whole life is that it's good for us. Okay? And no, I'm not talking about vaccines. I'm talking about a compound that's added to many of our hygiene products, that's also added to our drinking water. So let me just jump over and load up presentation here. All right, jumping over to the Fear versus Freedom page. Reclaim your health and own your life. That's the goal. And yes, I am talking about fluoride. Smile. It's only brain damage. What the heck do I mean by that? Well, let's jump into it. So, medicine is a very mechanistic approach to dealing with things, and it's broken down into specialties. And so dental is its own specialty, and that's all that matters to a dentist. All they learn about is the mouth, the teeth, and that's the only thing that matters. So they're going to look at fluoride and potentially see some benefits when it comes to the strength of your enamel and preventing cavities, and that's all that matters, regardless of any of the non-specific effects. Now, before we jump into actually learning about fluoride and what's the damage done to our body from fluoride, I kind of want to revisit the power of social engineering. So hopefully you watched my social engineering video. If you didn't, I'm going to highly recommend you do. Now, of course, I do kind of veer toward vaccines and giving examples of how we've been socially engineered to believe everything that we're told by the mainstream media and by doctors who really haven't got any education on the topic. And there's some very powerful tools and propaganda that get us to kind of follow along in a groupthink mentality. And fluoride is no different. So when we think about how social engineering affected our views on fluoride, you're going to want to keep in mind how it all works. Now, back in the 40s, it's pretty amazing, but somehow the government, along with the aluminum, steel, and fertilizer industries, convinced and coerced the public by blatantly lying to vote in favor of adding fluoride, which is a powerful neurotoxin, to our drinking water. In the process, removing the freedom of choice for all individuals that want to avoid this medical intervention. Now, how the heck did they do it? Now, I go back to the social engineering video because I talk a lot about kind of the man who wrote the book on propaganda was Edward Bernays, and really fine-tuning these manipulation techniques and groupthink mentality and creating this invisible government on how to control the people, nailed it down into a science. So before we really jump into how they got this law passed and it became nationwide, and then they started pushing this toxin on everybody and, getting it to go through the water system, and that was the easiest way for them to actually dump these toxins from these industrial byproducts at the cost of our health. Now, before we jump into that, let's learn a little bit about what is fluoride and why is it dangerous. So let's go back. We'll start with fluorine. Fluorine itself is a highly reactive element, or halogen. Halogens are nonmetallic chemicals or elements that include chlorine, bromine, iodine, things like that, and they are all used in industrial capacities to kill pathogenic organisms, bacteria, microbes, you name it, but they also kill human cells too. And really, we need to pay close attention to anything that's killing microbes, bacteria, viruses, and pathogenic organisms because, well, the majority of our body is made up of those in addition to our human cells. So what is fluoride? Well, fluoride is made when we combine fluorine with another element like calcium or sodium, and then once they combine, they exhibit metallic properties that can actually start accumulating inside our human tissue. Now, it's really important to understand that fact that these toxins accumulate in our body. They get held and trapped. It's not just fluoride, it's aluminum, it's mercury, it's lead, it's all of these toxins. And we're taught not to worry about it because, our body has mechanisms of detoxing, of getting rid of it. Our kidneys are all constantly filtering things out. That's true, but how much strain do we really have to put our bodies on, and how much damage are we doing by overload? This is just a massive overload of toxins. So let's continue on back in the PowerPoint. All right, so fluorine is the least dense and most reactive halogen. It's so reactive that it never ever occurs uncombined in nature. It can eat through steel, glass, iron, eat through aluminum. It's a byproduct of the aluminum and steel and fertilizer industries, and just like mercury, it's one of the most poisonous substances on Earth. Now, sodium fluoride, the quote-unquote safe fluoride, is what's used in rat poison and pesticides and in your toothpaste. So let that sink in for a minute. Sodium fluoride used in rat poison, pesticides, it's killing the bugs on the plants, right? And your toothpaste. Now everybody thinks, oh, fluoride's safe. They tell us it's safe, and yet on your toothpaste, you put a little bit on there, like a pea size, and it says, do not swallow. If you swallow, you call poison control. Doesn't sound too safe, does it? So remember, you are brushing your teeth with rat poison if you haven't decided to move away from fluoridated toothpaste. Now we can jump back, and there's a different kind of fluoride that's added to the water. The pesticide ingredient hexafluorosilicate is what is added to the water supply for you and your family to drink. And if you've ever seen pictures of the actual process when they're adding this fluoride to the water, it is a hazardous job. These guys are in hazmat suits. They have all the protective gear. They have the protective breathing masks. They're like trying not to get touched by this stuff, and they're pouring it into your drinking water. And then you are drinking it every single day and doing a lot more than that. Okay, so it sounds like I'm getting all crazy, and all you've been taught is, well, it's important. It makes our teeth stronger. Is that true? Okay, doesn't it make my teeth stronger? Well, hopefully you can see this picture, and it is a state called fluorosis. Okay, dental fluorosis, where the teeth are just rotting and decaying like crazy. Well, that is caused by fluoride. And that is actually what led us to connect dental and teeth to fluoride. So dental fluorosis is where they first started seeing this, where fluoride levels, or natural occurring fluoride, was very high in certain cities, natural is relative because it was typically from industrial waste and contamination getting into the water supply of these areas, and people were getting this horrific dental fluorosis, and they realized it was from fluoride. Okay, so in the early 1900s, it was observed that children in specific regions of the country had high incidence of damaged teeth. It was later to be determined that high levels of naturally occurring fluoride in the drinking water of those regions was the cause of the enamel irregularities, now known as dental fluorosis, which actually triggered efforts to have fluoride removed from the water sources of those areas. Okay, so think of this. Back in the day, when they actually cared about people and health outcomes, the effort was to remove fluoride from the water, not put it in. Okay? Think of that. So who suggested we add it to the public water supply to strengthen teeth? That is a very, very important question. And to answer that, you just have to follow the money. Or in this case, follow the money directly to the Mellon Institute. Meet Dr. Gerald Cox. The Mellon Institute was founded by the Mellon family, who also owned the Alcoa aluminum manufacturing plants. And through his work there, Cox believed he discovered a new vitamin. That's right, a new vitamin that's going to help us live a healthy life. This vitamin he called as a vitamin was actually fluoride. Fluoride and aluminum. And he believed that these were going to prevent cavities. This is how it all got started. Now, there were opponents to this, very heavy, that were just screaming warnings, saying, don't go this route, the fluoride is horrible, far before the even propaganda efforts began. You know, doctors that actually studied fluoride were saying this is a horrible decision. So Dr. John, I'm not even going to pronounce the name, Yamayanis, I guess I am, noted in his book, Fluoride, the Aging Factor, that the American Medical Association, on September 18th, 1943, cautioned that fluoride is a powerful protoplasmic poison, okay, which means that it damages the organelles like our mitochondria, chloroplasts, and our ribosomes, damages us at a cellular level, and that its accumulation would become a problem if water was purposely fluoridated, saying, this is a huge mistake, do not do it. Do not fluoridate the water. They were saying, we know that it accumulates. We know that it kills and destroys the important organelles in the cell. And that warning was completely ignored. On October 1st, 1944, the Journal of American Dental Association also noted that the potential harm outweighed those for good. So even the Dental Association was stating, you know what, maybe there's a benefit here, but the potential harm far outweighs any of the good that it could possibly do. So with that in mind, the Cox Foundation, or not Cox, the Mellon Group and Cox went ahead and hired the propagandist, the man who created and wrote the book on propaganda, and brought in the best spin doctor, Mr. Edward Bernays. Again, here we go. We saw him and his influence in the tobacco industry. We saw his influence all over the place. Here it is with fluoride. If you didn't know that Edward Bernays was involved in this, now you do. So he knew that all they needed to do was convince the dental professionals, and then the public would follow their, medical dental authorities, because that's what we do. We're sheep. We say, we're convinced at least to believe that we're not smart enough to understand this complex science, and please, doctor, scientist, tell me what to do. What should I do? Oh, drink the fluoride? You got it. Don't ask questions. So with the resources of the Mellon's fluoridation team and the social engineering expertise of Edward Bernays, city councils were convinced and legislation started being passed for the public water fluoridation only 3 months after the AMA and the ADA expressed their dire warnings, with no measure of safety in place. And this is exactly the way the vaccine programs were rolled out. But back to fluoride. This gave the melons and other industrial giants a way to shift liability from their huge fluoride dumps just by promoting it as a health benefit. When like clockwork, opponents to these invasive measures were quickly labeled loonies and alt-right wing extremists. I mean, does any of this sound familiar? We see it every day. You question anything mainstream science and you're labeled a loon, an extremist, eccentric, crazy. And I know firsthand that that's exactly where it goes, because I've been trying to educate friends and family for half a decade or more on health and nutrition topics that are important, and I'm the crazy one in the family. I'm the loon. I'm eccentric. I'm ridiculous. I'm also right. All right. Does drinking fluoride actually reduce cavities? This is a really, really interesting question, and one that still isn't solid science either way. Now, there is science that does actually, epidemiological studies that would say, yeah, it can. So let's look. Multiple studies show that cities with fluoridated water, when compared to unfluoridated cities, have no reduction in cavities, or that the unfluoridated cities have even a lower incidence in cavities. Cavities is also an individual term for cavities. So a lot of science says there is no benefit. However, there are manipulated studies that did support the desired narrative, and the one that they used to get the law passed originally, I believe it was in Michigan, for the first city to be fluoridated, and they just kind of ran with it across the nation. This is what they did. So they evaluated the research, and in order to get the outcome they wanted, they had to narrow in just onto the kids that were under the age of 6. And the reason why they had to do that is because the fluoridated group's tooth eruption, those little babies, their teeth breaking through the gums and actually coming out was delayed in the fluoridated group. So they actually had fewer teeth than the unfluoridated group. So then the unfluoridated group had a few more cavities because they had more teeth. I mean, how crazy is that? They had to manipulate the data to go down to a specific age range to find where there were fewer teeth in the fluoridated group because the teeth eruption was delayed from the fluoride, and the fluoridated group had a few more cavities or a cavity more, whatever, because they had more teeth. So it's just complete manipulation of the science, cherry picking to get the outcome that they wanted, and then they ran with it. It's exactly what they did with the MMR study that William Thompson, the whistleblower, came out and said, yeah, we completely manipulated the data. We were supposed to go by a school district, and then they ended up moving away from the district and then going to geozips because that kind of divided the group and took out the more, the poorer group of kids, and it reflected that there was no link to MMR when in fact there was. If you haven't seen Vaxxed, you need to watch it. But this is just science. This is science. Don't trust it. You need to do your own research. So what do some of the studies say? Here's a fairly recent study from September of 2018. The Untold Story of Fluoridation, Revisiting the Changing Perspectives. The discovery of fluoride in dentistry has revolutionized treatment modalities with a new aspect of prevention and conservation of tooth structure coming into foreplay. Since then, there's been a lot of research on both topical and systemic fluoridation in an overzealous attempt to control the most debilitating dental problems of caries. Again, cavities, caries. Now, pay attention to that one sentence. We need to look at the difference between topical and systemic fluoridation. Systemic being putting it in the water, drinking it, and having it go internally. What are the benefits systemically from drinking it? Now it says, although topical fluoride is still being widely used as a preventative measure for dental caries, systemic administration of the same has gained major criticism worldwide due to the low margin of safety of fluoride and no control over the amount of individual intake when administered on a community level. What does that mean? That means the poison is in the dose. I mean, it's toxic regardless. You're getting in poison, but it is dose dependent. How can you control the dose if it's in your water and you're drinking it and you're getting the same amount in an 8-ounce glass of water that you're told not to swallow on your toothbrush? And then you're told to drink however many glasses of water a day, which is a ridiculous number, and then you're cooking with it. And this has a strong affinity to bind to the food you're cooking, whether it's vegetables or boiling noodles or anything like that. It wants to bind to your food. And then it's also concentrating as the water evaporates and it's reduced into a concentrated level of fluoride. It's impossible to know the dose, to know your exposure, and you are getting poisoned every single day. Okay. This problem is more prevalent in countries with presence of natural fluoride belts that extend from Turkey to China, Japan through Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, increasing the chances of both dental and skeletal fluorosis. So if you saw what it was doing to those teeth in that picture, imagine that in your bones as well. And hence increasing a focus toward defluoridation. See, now we're coming back to the importance of defluoridation as we start to open our eyes and learn. This historical review highlights the distribution of fluoride worldwide and in India, and also discusses about the various claims of anti-fluoride lobby. Despite the profusion of rhetoric to the contrary, dental caries is a critical concern even today and continues to plague majority of the world's population with giant unmet treatment needs. They're always going to spin it to a positive because they have to get published, and if they want to get published, they can't destroy the mainstream narrative that fluoride is good. Same thing happens with any vaccine study you read. They have to throw in there, vaccines are the greatest thing that's ever happened to us, but they do cause immune disease and brain damage and blah, blah, blah. So pay attention to these studies and how they're worded and why they're worded that way. All right. Fluoride is the pivot of caries prevention and major breakthrough in the history of dentistry. A dogma had existed for many decades that fluoride has to be ingested and acts pre-eruptive, which it does not. Current evidence clearly suggests that the mechanism of action of fluoride is mainly topical and post-eruptive. It is mainly topical and post-eruptive. It is not beneficial systemically. Fluoride is rightly said, is a double-edged sword. Since topical benefits of fluoride are as good as systemic, but the rest are maximal on ingestion, the ideal recommendation would be to limit fluoride to dentrifices, and mouthwashes, adopting the precautionary principles categorizing fluoridation of community drinking water supply as an unreasonable risk. On the international front, most of the West European countries have rejected water fluoridation, including Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland. They're smarter than we are. The only 3 Western European countries which still practice water fluoridation are Ireland, Spain, well, Ireland 100%, Spain only 10%, the United Kingdom 11%. Countries like India, the need of the hour is defluoridation of community water supplies and should be considered by the government as an effective means to reduce fluoride toxicity in our country. Thus, even for the usage of preventing topical and systemic fluoride, the benefits and the risks must be thoroughly weighed. Guys, this needs to be asked of every intervention you've ever considered. I don't care if it's vaccines, if it's fluoride, if it's Botox, if it's gastric bypass surgery. You've got to look at really look at what are the risks. Okay, there could be a gain, there could be a short-term gain, but the long-term risks are so high with all of these interventions, and our bodies are built to thrive on this planet. All we have to do is take care of them and give them the tools that they need. All right, so let's jump into what are the side effects we're all going through from this forced medical procedure of fluoridated water. As you saw in those pictures, it causes dental fluorosis. It damages your DNA repair enzymes, which are critical for any toxic exposures you're getting, especially vaccines. You need those DNA repair enzymes. Increases your risk for osteoporosis, increases your risk for cancer, especially bone cancer, oral cancer, bladder cancer, and even lung cancer. It causes genetic damage that is then passed down. It causes skeletal fluorosis, causing fragile and fracturing bones and joints. This is very common today. It causes brain damage. Hence the title, Smile, it's only brain damage. It causes abnormal brain development. We're seeing lower and lower IQs in the cities where they fluoridate the water, and is causing damage to the nervous systems of these kids, of these people, of everybody, because you're all drinking it. It causes hypothyroidism. Okay? Who doesn't know somebody with hypothyroidism? I know several. I can name 3 in my head right now. Everyone's got a hypothyroid. They've got some kind of problem going on. Well, you're drinking it, buddy, friend. Stop. Clean it up. I'll show you how. And it reduces fertility. And that's a huge one. And that is a consequence of so many of the toxins that we're exposed to every day, is reducing fertility. Everybody knows a handful of people that couldn't get pregnant, that are using fertility treatments and trying to get pregnant and end up in the fostering and adopting because their bodies have been destroyed. It's horrific. It's tragic. So, it's killing us. But how do you know or even control the dose of exposure? You can't. When it's added to the water, we face the environmental accumulative effect, meaning it naturally increases levels in our food, in our beverages. Our crops are watered with it. We're cooking with it. We drink it. We bathe in it. And our skin, it's a sponge. Anything you put on it is soaked up and enters us systemically. So you don't even have, you're drinking it. You're bathing in it. It's out of control. It's present in many medications. Fluoride is a common ingredient in prescription and even over-the-counter medications, anesthetics, toothpaste. You can find it in fruit juices, teas, milk, meats, almost every bottled water. Pesticides, which is on all your food. Unless you're buying organic, you're highly exposed to fluoride. Animal feeds, etc. It is estimated that we consume 8 milligrams of fluoride every single day in the U.S., and that is 8 times higher than the recommended safe levels of fluoride consumption. Man. So now that you know fluoride alone is dangerous, man, what about when it combines with other elements in the body? The danger multiplies from there. Let's look at one of the obvious threats. So we're in the age of aluminum. Aluminum is in our water. It's in our food. It's in the air. It's in our vaccines. And what happens when aluminum and fluoride combine? Oh, it's called the alumina-fluoride complex, and it is highly neurotoxic. And I'm going to reference a study here. It says, see the study, the immunoexcitotoxicity as the central mechanism of idiopathology and treatment of autism spectrum disorders, a possible role of fluoride and aluminum. So let me jump out of here and let's look at this study. Now, I highly recommend that if you have the fortitude, the discipline to actually jump in and read the whole study, this is an amazing read. And I've had to read it several times because it's very complex, it's very in-depth, but it really helps me see a huge portion of the brain damage that happened to Holden and why he has such severe, irreversible neurodegenerative disease from the vaccines, from the fluoridated water, from the C-section that he had, from not being breastfed. He had all these things stacked against him. We knew nothing. We were just going along with what we were told is safe and effective and it's for your own good. No, it's not. Okay? Natural is best. Let's just take a look at this study. I keep thinking you can see me. You probably couldn't see me through all of that, but let's jump back in. Okay. This says, our review suggests that most autism spectrum disorder risk factors are connected, either directly or indirectly, to immunoexcitotoxicity. Chronic brain inflammation is known to enhance the sensitivity of glutamate receptors and interfere with glutamate removal from the extraneuronal space, where it can trigger excitotoxicity over a prolonged period. Neuroscience studies have clearly shown that sequential systemic immune stimulation can activate the brain's immune system, the microglia, and astrocytes, and that with the initial immune stimulation, there occurs central nervous system microglial priming. Children are exposed to such sequential immune stimulation via a growing number of environmental excitotoxins, it's all in our food, vaccines, and persistent viral infections. We demonstrate that fluoride and aluminum can exacerbate the pathological problems by worsening excitotoxicity and inflammation. While aluminum appears among the key suspicious factor of autism spectrum disorder, fluoride is rarely recognized as a causative culprit. A long-term burden of these ubiquitous toxins has several health effects with a striking resemblance to the symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. In addition, their synergistic action in molecules of alumina-fluoride complexes can affect cell signaling, neurodevelopment, and the central nervous system functions at several times lower concentrations than either aluminum or fluoride acting alone. So you need much less of the combined toxin than you would fluoride or aluminum alone. Once it combines, its toxicity is magnified extremely. And it's very, very difficult to deal with. Okay, in addition, their synergistic action can affect cell signaling. Our review opens the door to a number of new treatment modes that naturally reduce excitotoxicity and microglial priming. Okay. PMID number 297213353. But you can actually access the whole article here on this link, the free PMC article. You click into that, you can read the whole thing. Like I said, I've had to read it many, many times. I like the classic view better when I'm reading through it. And you can go through the whole thing. And maybe it is a long one. This is just one study, guys. You can dive into so much more. And it's really easy to start doing this research on your own. All you have to do is go over to PubMed, type in what you want to look at, right? I want to see fluoride. Maybe how it affects IQ. Click search. Bam. Study after study after study about how there is an association between, look, maternal fluoride exposure and child IQ. How many pregnant moms are drinking the water, bathing in the water, cooking with that water? All of them. You live in a fluoridated city, you're exposing you and your baby to fluoride. Go through, start clicking into these. Thyroid function with fluoride exposure. Developmental fluoride neurotoxicity. 14 recent cross-sectional studies from endemic areas of natural high fluoride concentrations in groundwater supported the previous findings of cognitive deficits in children with elevated fluoride exposures. 3 recent prospective studies from Mexico and Canada with individual exposures showed that early life exposures were negatively associated with children's performance on cognitive tests. Neurotoxicity appeared to be dose-dependent, and tentative benchmarks dose calculations suggest that safe exposures are likely to be below currently accepted or recommended fluoride concentrations in drinking water. The recent epidemiological results support the notion that the elevated fluoride intake during early development can and does result in IQ deficits that may be considerable. It's just a nice way of saying brain damage, folks. Brain damage. It's unreal. Okay. I think I've maybe given enough to get you to want to do your own research and jump in and start reading about this stuff. Again, I showed you how you can easily do this on PubMed just by jumping in here and typing in a few things. Fluoride cognitive, fluoride central nervous system. Whatever you want to search it. You have the freedom, for now at least, until they take this away, to do this. You can do this with vaccines. You can do this with anything that you have a question about. Go read the studies. Okay, there's so much out there. And if you want to hear it from an expert who actually did read the studies and knows how to understand it and then write it in plain English, you want to hear it in plain English? Health and Nutrition Secrets That Can Save Your Life. Dr. Russell Blaylock, neurosurgeon. Okay, he's diving into deeply the environmental factors that are just destroying our lives. And the best part about it is he opens your brain, he opens your mind and says, look at what's killing you, what we're lied to, what we're told is safe and effective. It's not. You got to get this book. It's highly referenced. You can go in and find the studies, but he really breaks it down into plain English, and then he gives you guidance on what to do dietarily, what to do supplements to arm your body with the tools it needs to battle this toxicity that has accumulated in all of us, but in other people at different levels. For Holden, it's just stuck forever and it's accumulating. And that excitotoxicity it talks about, the way it affects the glutamate sensitivities, anything that's high in glutamate, and he's having seizures like crazy. He was the canary in the coal mine that led me down this path to figure out how are we destroying our bodies, because everything we do, it was quick for us to figure this out with fluoride. In fact, that was one of the first ones we found out for Holden, was when we moved to Colorado. They didn't fluoridate the water here, and then every time we'd go back and visit family in Utah, he'd have tons of seizures, and we could never figure it out. And I went through all these scenarios in my mind, and one time I said, there's got to be something in the water. And as soon as I said that, I thought, I bet there is. And I went into the county websites of the counties that all of our families, and the city websites, and looked at the fluoridation levels, and every city that we'd go visit had the highest levels of fluoride you could do legally. And so then we started bringing bottled water every time we came, and he'd do better, a little bit better. And that was the first time I started focusing on environmental factors, was fluoride. And then we found monosodium glutamate. And then I learned about monosodium glutamate and free glutamate and excitotoxicity, and that led me to Dr. Blaylock's work. And, tandemly, I was also learning about vaccines and the environmental factors of that as well. So it just continues to go. The more you start to learn, the better off you are. And I don't want to learn because then I get crazy. No, you get smart. You stop living in fear. That's the whole fear versus freedom thing. You learn that your body is capable of self-healing and self-regulating. And it was man's interventions that actually caused irreversible damage in my kids. Okay, and now it's me doing everything I can to help support them naturally with everything that God gave us on this planet that was proper and right for our bodies, not these lab-created concoctions, these synthetics, these awful things that are just destroying our health. So anyway, I just want to talk about fluoride today and let you go, all right? So the good news is you do have some control here. We moved to a city that doesn't fluoridate the water. We moved to Colorado Springs. When we tried to go back to Utah, we didn't go to northern Utah. We went down to St. George where they don't fluoridate the water. There's always going to be some levels of natural occurring fluoride, but it's not going to be that industrial waste that they're putting in the water. Now you also can start drinking cleaner water. I highly recommend distilled water. This is at Kroger, Simple Truth vapor distilled water with the electrolytes added back in, also known as the brand name Smart Water. Okay, but it's much less expensive here. This is going to help reduce, probably not eliminate, but reduce your fluoride exposure. We drink this. We cook with this. We don't, our water's not supposed to be fluoridated, so we haven't really had to do a lot of filtering in the home. But if you're going to try to filter out fluoride and chlorine and all that stuff, you're going to do a reverse osmosis filter. They're not cheap, and it's not easy to do one at the house level where the water's going to the house, so that everywhere else that it goes in the house is filtered. You'll probably have to put one in the kitchen and maybe some in the bathrooms or whatever. But if you have the money to do it, do it. We actually love just buying this in bulk. And again, we drink with it. We make our coffee with it. We boil our noodles. Well, we don't eat noodles. Well, some of us do. For those on keto, we do zucchini noodles. For those do. Either way, we're avoiding the fluoride. So we'll also talk plastics. You want to know what kind of plastic you're getting. This is also a BPA-free plastic. Does that mean it's perfect? No. There's still toxins in plastic. But we are at least avoiding the exogenous estrogen of the BPA, which is in those crackly plastics. Like the Costco's, the Nestle's, it's a really flimsy bottle. You want to avoid that. So anyway, we're going to continue to go down all these roads. Fluoride, stop eating sugar. Start taking care of your mouth. You don't have to rely on fluoride. Okay? Our bodies can heal. Teeth actually are alive and can heal. And you just have the proper diet with a good amount of magnesium, vitamin D3, vitamin K2, yes, calcium, and healthy bioavailable fats, and your teeth will become strong. Your cavities can heal. Believe it or not, your body knows what to do. So anyway, thanks for joining. Love you guys. Bye.